Welcome or welcome back. This is Pairs Well Knitting. I'm Jennifer, and this is a knitting podcast all about knitting, yarny adventures, and travel. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I'm thrilled to be saying that I'm sharing all of my knits from 2023. This is everything I've made, and I've chunked it into two parts. This part is part 1 of 2, and this will be all of the garments. This is sweaters, vests, and slipovers. The part 2 that will be coming in the near future are all the accessories. The socks, the hats, the mitts, the cowls, the shrugs, and the scarves. I wish to mention that if you do not wish to geek out hard on all the knitting data that I've collected and put together for an overall analysis of 2023, no worries, you can skip ahead. I have put a little timestamp into the video where you can click ahead to view the sweater fashion show for 2023. Thanks so much. So let's look what I actually knit. This I really enjoy doing, to review what I have knit, because I think in my mind and my memory served quite different. This is going to be really interesting if I keep this up for future years, to look and see how I'm changing, how my knit tastes are going, and what I'm choosing to knit on by choice. So the first thing I did was look at what I actually knit. I classified this into 3 different sections, which was sweaters, vests, and accessories. If I was asked before I put this together, I would have said garments was my highest knit. This is actually not the case, and accessories happen just at under 60% of the time of my finished objects for 2023, which I would never have guessed. But I wonder if it's because they're smaller, and I was finding if I was knitting on one accessory, I would knit another one, a second one using the same pattern. I also did quite a bit of traveling, so that might have had something to do with it, and commuting. Sweaters came in at just over 33% and vests just under 7%. So still heavy on the garments, but actually not as much as I thought. Next up, a really interesting category that I chose to analyze was garment attributes. Now this is just looking at today's part 1 feature of sweaters, vests, and slipovers. So what was I gravitating to in 2023? And 50% of the time, half the time, I was going after solid color sweaters and vests. This is when I was using one yarn, maybe paired with another, but was consistent throughout the entire garment. And I'm actually not surprised on that, because solids is a favorite of mine to knit with and produce, but also to wear. Next up was a quarter of the time I was knitting with texture. And texture are things that I was classifying as things with nups and baubles, giving the fabric some bits and bobs. I was classifying this with ribbing, like all over ribbing, broken rib, fisherman rib, that kind of thing. So a quarter of the time. It would be amazing to find out, is this the trend of the knitting community and patterns that were produced during this time of the like 2023, or was this just something that spoke to me? It'd be amazing to find out. Then next up on the heavier side of my knitting choices was lace. At just over 12.5% of the time was lace. Lace I really enjoy producing. Lace always looks amazing. It's a big bang for your buck, in my opinion. I really enjoy producing lace, and I love wearing lace as well. Tied for last place or least popular of my knits in 2023, coming at just over 6%, was between color work and cables. I started knitting cables, I feel, this year more than ever before, but still quite a bit lower on the ranking scale of what I actually knit as my attributes. I love this. I can't tell you how fun this was to put together, and I hope you're enjoying it. I have 2 more categories just to share quickly, were the type of yarn I used and yarn weights. So it could be interesting for you as a fellow knitter to find out, are we knitting with the same types of fiber? If so, this could be a great match, or maybe you're inspired to knit with these kinds of fibers, and this could also help, I hope. So the yarn weights I've used, the majority of the time out of all the options, were worsted and Aran. I paired these two weights together because it really depends where the yarn, the origin is coming from. So just under 38% of the time, I'm a worsted or an Aran girl. Then next up was fingering at 27%, which this was a bit of a surprise to me. However, I thought about it because I'm not a fingering knitter at all, but I was pairing fingering with something else always. So either two strands of fingering together to get a DK weight, or for example with a mohair. My next up was a double knit or a DK at about almost a quarter of the time. This is what I was knitting with. And this turned out to be a favorite of mine this year. I really enjoyed the DK train. And last was chunky. The last grouping of items I'm looking at before we do a deep dive into all the review are the types of yarn that I used. So we are looking at 50% of the time exactly was rustics. Again, if you asked me, I would have said I always knit with rustics. Apparently not the case. And I actually believe this is in part because of gift knitting. When I'm gift knitting, I'm doing superwash, I'm doing definitely mixed fibers. So there we are. Next up is what I was classifying as soft yarn. Again, this is kind of that piece that I was talking about. It can be mixed fibers, it can be blown yarn, it can be hand-dyed merino or commercial merino, anything soft, that's at 26%. Then I'm looking at mohair, so just over 17% of the time I use mohair, more or less than you. I don't know, but it's what I use for 2023, and I always paired a mohair with something else to change the fiber, usually the feel of it. Sometimes gauge, but usually it was the feel for me, or the appearance, because I love that little fluff look. The next was unspun. I did dive into unspun yarn for myself using Plutalopi. I think it was only the Plutalopi this year. You'll see. So 4% of the time was that. And last was plant fiber. This is like things like cotton, bamboo, linen, so 2% of the time. Again, not surprised because I am not a spring, summer knit girl. I'm autumn, early spring, winter. So that is pretty much the review of 2023 in numbers. Now what I really want to do is go into my rating system quickly so that I can get into all of my garments. This is a huge show and tell, so let's get everyone set up so we know what we're looking at. What I've done is I came up with criteria that I would rate my knitwear at. I don't want to just say, oh, I really like this piece or I wear it a lot. I don't know for me if it was that meaningful. I'm really trying to reflect on my knitting this year, if you haven't noticed with the data I've already shared, to really understand myself as a knitter even more. And over the years, as I continue to grow, what is this meaning? How am I changing, if I am? And kind of adapting. Am I following the trends? Am I following my knitting heart? So I've also polled in Instagram to try to gain even more insight into what you, or how I should say, you might review your knitting. And what I did is I put together basically 3 pieces of main criteria to review all of my knitwear. The first is knitting experience. This I included, and I've chunked it down. This is still includes only, I'm saying, 1 classification here. Was this a pleasing experience from pairing the pattern and the yarn choice together? Now for me, because I tend to go slightly rogue and modify my patterns quite a bit, this is very individual, but I feel like this could be a great piece of criteria that you could base your review on as well. In an experience, I also included, was I highly satisfied with the pattern, the yarn, and the techniques? So in other words, a combination. And this sometimes, obviously, if I'm choosing a different yarn that wasn't recommended by the designer and I'm going rogue, this is, again, quite a personal reflection of that. And the last piece of knitting experience was, did it bring great joy? Did I really enjoy that process as I was knitting this up? That's all knitting experience. The second item or criteria that I'm going to be basing all of my knitwear on is project aesthetic. So this is it beautiful or is it interesting? Does it have some appeal for myself to look at or for others? Is it visually pleasing, the pairing of the pattern and the yarn choice? So again, something very personal that when I've done this, is that combination, is that pairing nice? Do we enjoy it? Or maybe that sweater would have been nicer in a different or recommended yarn. The last piece of project aesthetic is, am I proud of my finished object? So am I feeling good when I'm wearing it? Am I happy to be wearing it? And maybe on the occasion that I'm choosing to wear it, am I choosing to go out in it? Or just simply, is it an at-home knit, a cozy knit? The last piece of criteria that I'm going to be rating all of my knitwear today on will be wearability. So this includes 3 pieces as well. Does it have a high frequency amount of wears? Am I wearing this on a good rotation, or is it kind of in the back of my closet? How versatile is the piece? Hopefully it is quite versatile that I can wear it not only with jeans, but a lot of other different pants, skirts, dresses, that kind of thing, and colors. And then the last is, does it feel great on? Am I feeling amazing when I wear it? It's part of that pride piece as well. Am I excited to put it on my body? And those are the 3 pieces of my criteria. So we've got knitting experience, project aesthetic, and wearability. I'm rating these on a 1 to 5 scale. Basically 1, ew, not my thing. We're looking at 2, not so great. 3 is take it or leave it. We've got 4, which is good. And 5, fabulous, couldn't be better, thrilled about that piece of knitwear. Okay, I think we're set up. Let's get into the 2023 Pairs Well with Knitting Garment Fashion Show. First up is actually what I'm wearing. This sweater is called the Peacock Sweater, and this is designed by LeKnit. I knit this in a Topsy Farm worsted weight yarn in their teal colorway. I knit this at the very beginning of the year. I think I cast on right before 2023 had started and finished at the beginning of 2023. This is a top-down lace sweater that is knit with the, I believe it's the Peacock lace stitch. I've included a folded collar just to finish it off really nicely. And I gave it a little decrease at the sides, kind of at the late bust, bottom bust. And I included 2 extra increases as I'm heading towards like my belly button. The shape of the sweater I really enjoy. I did do a lot of modification because the weight was a lot lighter than the recommended. The recommended was a very chunky knit. This is actually, believe it or not, a lot less chunky. So I went for the biggest size in the sweater and kind of did a little bit of math to get the sizing right on this. I mean, right away, kicking off the year, was doing already funky things with my knits. This is an enjoyable knit for me. It's one that I don't gravitate to a ton. But I should. It's an easy wear sweater, and it is one that I tend to wear quite a bit at home instead of going out with. I'm not really sure the reason on that is. Let's do a quick little review of this guy. So looking at the Peacock sweater, Let's do this. We are looking at the 3 pieces of criteria. We're looking at knitting experience, project aesthetic, and wearability. The knitting experience, from my memory, I would say is a good, only because I did do the modifications. I wouldn't give it a 5 because I did do a bit of calculations that took a little more brain space than I would have enjoyed. Project aesthetic, I would also do a 4 or good. Again, it's a piece that I don't wear out a lot, and she's more of a home knit, but you know, it's all a personal choice. Wearability, I would say, again, a 4. I would say this is good. I do wear it. I mean, there's already some pilling, which indicates that I have worn it, and it is a rustic yarn. But I'm not feeling like I have to go and wear this all the time. When I am wearing it, it feels good, but I'm not feeling crazy proud of it. So overall, this scores a 4. The second sweater that I knit of 2023 was a Ranunculus. This is, I think, number 4 for me at this point. And this was a really rich, deep color Ranunculus that I really had this vision of, and I feel like I achieved it in what I've done with my yarn. So the Ranunculus is a very popular pattern by Midori Hirose, very versatile pattern. This is a top-down lace sweater, round yoke. And on this, I did a twisted rib, single like side of fabric throughout the neck, the hemline, and the cuffs. The cuffs I did a little longer than I usually do. I knit on a US 8. I remember this because I believe the pattern calls for a 10, and the 8 just tightened up that gauge slightly. It gives a really nice fit, I find, for me. The yarn I used is 1 strand of Hillesvag Solje, or Solje maybe, I'm not sure, Solje, and 1 strand of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair. It was a great combination, and in the Hillesvag is a very deep, like navy, almost midnight blue. The Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair, I chose a black, and it just kind of gives this like rich, deep, kind of, I don't know, I'd say like almost like romantic vibe, evening vibe. It's great. Let's do a little rating on this guy. So if I look at my rating system, I'm looking at knitting experience, project aesthetic, and wearability. My knitting experience for this was definitely a 5. I love the Ranunculus. This is obviously a number of them now that I've knit, and it's always a pleasurable experience. I feel so good as I knit on it, and every section that has different kind of texture or lace work is fun. It's interesting. It keeps it exciting. The project aesthetic, I feel like this is stunning knit. I feel for what you do on your needles and the visual of what you get is a huge bang for your buck. It's amazing. I feel, you know, when I do wear this, it's commented on, so I have to give this a 5. I don't know if you're putting me in the cliche category, but that's fine. I love this. My wearability, this is high frequency for me. I think it's the weight of the sweater because of the combo of the rustic fingering plus some mohair. I can pair it with blouses where I feel like it looks really professional and lovely. I've paired it with like a merino undergarment, what's it called? Like a base layer. Which is super simple, like you could wear for skiing, and then I put the Ranunculus over. It's cozy, but still looks really good. It's great. I have to go 5 for wearability. I'm looking at an overall 5. It's a fabulous knit for me, and I would say that not all my Ranunculi would be at a 5. This is my favorite one by far. I love it. Fantastic, fantastic knit. Next up on the docket is this orange number. This is the sweater number 12 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It is a top-down construction of raglan stitching. The texture is a broken, I think it's called broken fisherman's rib, and it was a fun knit. I should talk about the yarn. This was one strand of Knitting for Olive Merino, just that little thin fingering, with one strand of their matching soft silk mohair. The color is a dream. I chose this at a time when we were really dark and gray here in the city, and this was a cast on going down south for March break, and I couldn't have been happier. Yes, I knit this on the beach with mohair flying in the breeze, but I had a glorious time. This is full of memories for me, and just was so satisfying to watch it come all together. I really enjoy that thick multiple stitches of the raglan to just really, I don't know, like accentuate where the sleeves are. It just frames the body so nicely. Let's get into a rating for sweater number 12. Knitting experience, I would give this a 4 for myself. I found, for me, it was a little confusing as you're learning the motif of the broken rib, plus you've got your chunky like raglan stitches, and of course you're doing short row shaping. There was a lot going on in the beginning, and then I feel like this even though I think I knit this fairly efficiently, I felt like I wanted just to kind of get it done at one point. It's a beautiful design, nothing against the designer, of course, but for me it wasn't a stockinette project. So I was still being mindful as I was knitting on this. Project aesthetic, I would give this a 4. Here's why. I would like a denser fabric, and this might be my gauge. Usually, you know, I'm off my gauge because I am quite a loose knitter. Yeah, I feel I would, if I knit this again, I would like something that's just denser, where you're not seeing what you're wearing underneath completely. It might also have to do with the colorway, but I would go 4. And I think even for me, that's part of the pairing of the yarn and the pattern. I can't remember exactly what was recommended, but I don't think it was far off of what I chose with a fingering and a mohair. Wearability, how frequently am I wearing it? Is it versatile? How does it feel on? I'm gonna go 4 on this. It's something that I don't frequently wear or reach for, but the color makes it fun. So I am reaching for this in warmer weather, or if I'm ever wanting that blip of color. I have to say, even with this color, it is pretty versatile in my closet, going with the blues and the blacks I have. So I think overall I'm looking at a 4.5 for this sweater, and my knitwear rating 4.5. My next sweater, this was a freestyle sweater. I'll say designed by me, but no design. And what I did is I knit a sweater that was mimicking that really chunky set of raglan stitches. I envisioned a stockinette stitch sweater, and this is what I made. This was a lot of trial and error as I was going. I adore the knit. The yarn I used is Hairsfield Designs Highland. This is in their Kiwi colorway, and I couldn't be more thrilled with the color choice of this, with the little blips of yellow. I did 3 different necklines. If you've seen my very first episode, this was knit in the spring, and I did a folded down neckline, just a really small one. I had tried different ribbing. Nothing seemed to really allow kind of the marriage of the entire design of the sweater work. But for some reason, the ribbing on the sleeves and the hem made it come together. I didn't do a folded knit or a double knit anywhere else. I adore the raglan. And so I said that this was inspired by sweater number 12, even though, again, all of the calculations are my own and totally different stitching. But it was that raglan, chunky raglan idea that I used as inspiration to drive this sweater. We are going to rate this kiwi green freestyle sweater. My knitting experience with this, I'm going to go a 4, which was good. This obviously was a massive challenge for me. Learning kind of, you know, with the fitting, with, you know, as I'm stitching and going down, doing a lot of trying on, ripping back. I wouldn't give it less than a 4 because I did learn so much. And it was, I think, my first time as well doing a knit down collar and not a ribbing collar, if I'm not mistaken. And it was just something that I felt like this is what I needed. I'm not going to go a 5 because it wasn't easy, but I also feel like the techniques that I did on this sweater weren't entirely new or exciting to me, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm going to go solid 4. I'm going to go 4. It did bring joy, for sure, knitting it. But I feel like the finished garment brings more joy to me than the process. Let's look at the project aesthetic of this. I feel like it is a beautiful sweater. It is interesting. I have not seen another sweater like this out there, and I don't know if it exists, so if it does, you can holler. I feel the yarn choice and the pattern, the design that I knit, fantastic. I feel like it doesn't get better. That tight, really like structured fabric it created. And I'm super proud of this finished object because she's my own. So I'm gonna go a solid 5 on that for project aesthetic. Wearability. This is high frequency during certain months for me. I am reaching for this spring, summer, and into fall. It hasn't been a big winter knitwear that I'm wearing a lot, interestingly, and I wonder if it is color. I'm gravitating towards really like big, bulky knits this winter, and this is a more fitted piece. So I'm gonna go a 4 for this one because it's not totally year-round, if that makes sense. But when I am wearing it, it feels fabulous on. It is quite versatile. I think it does wear best with pants because I've brought the ribbing in a bit. Love it. So I'm gonna go like, I'll give it a 4.5, a 4.5 on the knitwear rating. All right, we are now looking at the Sorel sweater. This is a sweater designed by Wool in Pine. This is a top-down, very textured sweater that I used Ramaphenol in a beautiful apricot colorway. 4069 was the colorway. I paired 2 strands of Ramaphenol together to get this gauge. The gauge was significantly off from the pattern recommendation, but I was determined to use this yarn in this color for this sweater. The sweater is a really interesting construction because you're doing a dip stitch, but you're also knitting inside out for a portion of the sweater. It was really cool to make, and it was very satisfying to knit on. It did guzzle the yarn. So as I was knitting, I realized that I wasn't going to have enough yarn to create a full sleeve sweater. So totally fine. I did a 3/4 length sweater. Total different calculations. I think there was a chart involved. I think I even, yeah, I can't remember a lot about it, and I'm not going into detail because I went into detail on I think my first episode on this sweater. It was an interesting knit for sure. I don't know how much of a fan I am of the reverse stock net. I know some people adore it. I'm not sure exactly how I feel. Let's look at our rating. So to rate the Sorel sweater knitting experience, I really had a great time knitting it, even though I did do a lot of calculations. But as I said, it was a super satisfying knit with that dip stitch. It was my first time. I've got to go 5. And I think a lot of it had to do with the ramaphenol as well. It's definitely such a satisfying yarn, rustic yarn to work with. We're going to get into project aesthetic. So I do find it's a really beautiful and interesting piece of knitwear that I enjoy wearing. It's a really interesting pairing of pattern and yarn. Again, even though totally went rogue and did a lot of other calculations, but I am really proud of this finished object. That being said, not a super fan of the reverse stockinette. Wearability, how much am I actually wearing it? I'm gonna go 4 on that. I think it's something that I could wear potentially more if it had a long sleeve, but because it's 3/4, I am pretty limited, I think, into the weather that I'm wearing this with. It does feel really good on. Again, that's thanks to the yarn choice. And so I think overall, I'm doing a 4.5 again for this sweater. We're looking at a 4.5 knitwear rating. We now have the Lou sweater, or I should say the Lou Genser. This is a pattern that came from the Sanis Garn in Micht Till Dum magazine, which is a soft for women magazine. And I knit this using Hairsville Designs Highland in Azure. This is a very oceanic piece of rustic knitwear, and I feel the color is super fun. This is a top-down raglan sweater that has some interesting kind of, out-of-the-box raglan design with the increases that are made with a ribbing almost in the raglan. So we're looking at knits and purls to create that kind of distinctive bump as you go down the raglan stitch. It's got a 2x2 ribbing everywhere else on the neckline, on the cuffs, and the hem. And the hem I did a couple times. This in the end was the design, which was a split hem. I've knit this a lot longer than I've knit many of my sweaters. And she's a beautiful one, but let's get into the review because I think it might disclose how I'm actually feeling about it. So knitting experience, I found it was a really lovely, simple knit. Didn't involve a ton of thinking, minus a bit of the knitting and purling pieces that were on the raglan, but it's a stockinette delight. Did it bring me great joy in knitting it? I'm gonna go 4. I'm gonna go 4 for my knitting experience. It wasn't my favorite thing that I knit on this year. Project aesthetic, I'm gonna go, I think I have to go 3. You're probably judging, and that's fine. Here's why. I feel I love Hairsville Designs cones. They're my favorite to go to. You've already seen a couple things knit in them, but this blue is really not my shade. This azure color, it seemed fun at the time to choose, and it's definitely not in my wheelhouse at all. The pairing of the yarn and the pattern was okay. Am I proud of the finished object? Not totally. I mean, it's one of the sweaters that I feel like for where I am in my knitting world, in my brain and with my hands, it's okay. It's okay. I'm gonna go 3. Wearability, it is not on the high frequency of rotation. I find I try to wear this sweater. I try to pick it and put it with some of the things I'm wearing. It doesn't bring me great joy when I'm wearing it. I'm feeling guilty for saying this, but this is the truth. And yeah, it's not super versatile because I think not only the split hem for me, but because it is a longer sweater. I find shorter sweaters, I feel better in, I look better in. The longer one, I feel like it just kind of drags everything down for me. Wearability, I'm gonna go 3. This is my lowest scoring sweater yet. This is the Lou sweater. Beautiful design. It's me. I'm gonna go, I think in the end, that's like, what is that? That's the 3.5. We're going a 3.5 on the knitwear rating for the loose sweater. Next up, this is the Felix pullover. This is a sweater designed by Savory Knitting, or Amy Christoffers. I knit this in a yarn that I picked up in Maine, called the Sheep's Natural by Door Yard Yarn, in the sheep's black. It is a very rustic wool. And this sweater design is a top-down construction with eyelet stitches that are produced to create your raglan increases as you go on the yoke. This has a 1x1 ribbing on the neckline, on the cuff, and on the hem. Everything else is stock net. It is a really simple knit to produce, but the eyelet stitches on the raglan give it a little bit of interest. The overall shape of this sweater, I have to say, for me, is so pleasing on the body. I think it's just Amy Christoffers stitch counts that allow for this sweater to have a boxy yet kind of like beautiful fitting silhouette to the body, or perhaps my body in particular, I'm not sure. It's a very popular pattern, so I think it definitely, you know, strokes that kind of figure for a lot of people in the right ways. This is a Felix pullover. I really enjoy it, and I think it's going to come out in the knitwear rating, so let's look. Knitting experience, it's very pleasing to knit on. And you're probably wondering, like, how is this more pleasing than, say, the Lugenser? This is great because I feel like those lace stitches that you're knitting are really satisfying and keep you interested for the yoke. It's a somewhat crop sweater, so you're bibbidi-bobbidi and go. It's a fairly like satisfying but quick knit as well. The sleeves are fitted or tapered, I should say, and have less ease. So you're doing decreases throughout the sleeves as you go, which I don't know if a lot of people enjoy. I've heard not. I find for me, whenever I attach those little light bulb stitch markers every so many stitches when I'm decreasing along the sleeve, that gives me great motivation to continue the sleeve. I'm gonna go 5. I love knitting the sweater. This is my third sweater of the Felix and will not be the last. It's fantastic to knit up. Project Aesthetic, again, maybe you're gonna be surprised. I think this is a stunning knit. It is super simple and beautiful, but because it's done so well, they always say, you know, if you are having something that is simple, it has to be done perfectly. This design is perfection to me. I love this. So Amy Christoffers, like, yes, like, good job, yay for all of this. I think it's visually pleasing, the pairing of the yarn and the pattern. It sings to me. I think this was a great combo, and I mean, I've knit with other yarns as well. It's a really versatile pattern with yarn choice. I'm really proud of this, even though, again, it's a really simple knit, but I've had people really commenting on it. Project Aesthetic 5. There we go. Last piece of the wearability. How does it fit into my wardrobe rotation? High frequency. Not only does it go with everything, I'm talking pants, skirts, dresses. This color, obviously the black, this is a go-to color of mine for the winter. And again, because of the little eyelet stitches, if I wear it black on black, it's great. It's monochromatic. It looks great. When I wear a different color underneath, say white blouse, say a chambray blouse, pops of little color of magic under the lace stitching, 5, solid 5. This is a winner. I love the Felix. I love Amy Christoffers' design. Will not be my last. 5, solid 5. We are continuing to get into the knitting of items while I was away on my trips this year. This is the Snowy Forest sweater. This is a design by the Midori Hirose, who was the designer as well with the Ranunculus. This is a newer design by her, and it is a beautiful top-down cable sweater. Cable only in the yoke. The remainder of the sweater, the sleeves and the body after, are stock net. I knit this in 2 strands of Plutolopi. And so unspun yarn, it was a good time to knit. I did a lot of modifications. I did not do a fraction of the increases I was supposed to on the yoke because it was looking really large. I did a folded neckline to give it some more like cinching up at the neck, because the original design calls and looks for quite a wider neckline. I wanted it closer. I knit this with a lot less ease than the body, so it's much tighter, a lot less boxy than the original design was intended to be. And I made the sleeves a lot longer and cozier. I really enjoy this knit. However, when I wear it, I kind of feel like a muscle man. Not that I'm opposed to muscles, love feeling strong. If you've followed me, you know I love working out and running, and I really enjoy muscles. But because of, I think, all the mods that I did, I'm feeling really top heavy in this sweater. So where the cables are situated, and possibly with the yarn choice with the unspun, it looks really heavy up top and then cinches in right after the cables are done. So you're looking a little top heavy. You're like, is she gonna fall over? Has she been like bulking up at the gym? I don't know. It's an interesting combination for me. Let's get into the rating. Knitting experience. This is fantastic to knit on. However, the unspun choice of yarn was, sorry, city noises. The unspun yarn was very unpleasant when I was knitting down the collar. It was the only time I had issues with the unspun yarn breaking. To me, never again. I will never knit a piece of fabric over on itself with unspun yarn. It was not fun. I would say, okay, this is where I'm going. I'm gonna go with 3 on my knitting experience. I did do a lot of ripping out. I did do a lot of second guessing. I feel like because I was so in love with the cables, but I wasn't in love with the original, and I hope this is okay to say, the original fit or look, the aesthetic of the fitting with the super boxy and the super wide neck. I did do a lot of work to kind of counterbalance that. I don't know if it was exactly, I know it's not exactly as I had planned. I'm gonna go, my knitting experience was a 3. It was okay. I wanted it to be better. The project aesthetic, again, you've kind of already heard, you know, I wanna love it. I just don't. It is interesting. The cables are beautiful. The designer did such a great job of doing this part for sure. I am proud of the cabling, but the overall sweater we have to talk about. I'm not in love, and I don't wear it a lot. I'm gonna go 3, which leads me into the wearability. Am I wearing it a lot? Is it rotating in my general weekly or monthly wear? And am I feeling great when it's on? I'm gonna go 3 to be very nice. And again, it's me. I made this a very top heavy knit, and it feels a little silly on at times. Hopefully if I block again, and I've done a wet block, an aggressive wet block, trying to get everything kind of in line with the cables and the stock net to kind of meet together and balance each other out, I think I could get somewhere better than a 3 on this. However, it's just not. I added Shirt Rose again too, sorry, that's another mod I did. I think a 3 is nice, and this is no reflection of the designer. This is my reflection, and with my mods. 3, it's a 3, she's a 3. All right, we are getting into now another texture sweater. This is the Field Sweater by Camilla Vad. This is a top down sweater that has beautiful texture, where the designer calls these grains that are produced with different stitches of, how can I say without giving away, basically knitting stitches together, maybe is the easiest way to say it. And it just creates a beautiful motif at the yoke. I did just 1x1 ribbing, which I believe is called for in the pattern, and on the neckline, the hem, and the cuffs. And this was knit in sheer in buttermilk. This is a very natural DK weight yarn from Hillesvag Designs, and it is a woolen spun yarn. It's super light. It was a dream to knit with. I'll repeat this again, as I have in previous podcasts, where I felt like a knitting ballerina as I was knitting this up. And it was the yarn. It was amazing to work with. I cannot wait to work with it again. It was a pleasure. It was a sensation that was just so pleasing as I was knitting with my needles and this yarn. The sheer in buttermilk by Hillesvag Designs was a dream. Let's rate the sweater, because this sweater was a very, I feel, popular sweater through Instagram, and I feel like everyone wanted to knit this sweater at one point. I got on the train right away, really glad I did. Let's review the sweater. So, looking at knitting experience, was it pleasing to have that experience between the pairing of the pattern and the yarn choice? Yes, I followed the DK recommendation of the pattern, and of course the yarn was just delicious, so that was awesome. I was highly satisfied with the pattern and yarn techniques. There were no problems with any of the pattern instructions. That being said, the instructions were vast. They were all written from my memory, and quite intense. You have to follow every row exactly as written. So I had my phone out the whole time while knitting on this. It did bring me great joy as I was knitting this. So I'd go between 4 and 5 for this. The only reason why I would not maybe go a full 5 for my knitting experience is the fact that I had to look at my phone the entire time. However, I enjoyed the techniques. Everything else was fabulous. Okay, I'm gonna go 5. I'm gonna go 5. I'm going 5. Just don't expect to knit this in the car as you're driving, because your phone will slip and you will need to know every stitch of that row for the entire duration of the grains. Project aesthetic, this is a stunner. I feel exceptionally proud when I wear it. I feel like I love the texture. I feel the look is fabulous. Again, the pairing of the yarn and the pattern couldn't be better, in my opinion. I think it was just wonderful. It is beautiful, it is interesting, and it's a one-of-a-kind sweater. You cannot buy this off of a rack. It's amazing. Wearability, this is high frequency for me. I am wearing this often. I think it's a combination of the pride that I knit this, because it is such a beautiful sweater, but combined with that woolen spun yarn, it's really versatile. It's warm, but it's light at the same time, and that makes sense. So it's a dream to wear. It's super soft for rustic yarn too, so it's that interesting combination for me where I'm starting to question. I am a rustic girl at heart, of course. I will continue with rustics, but this might be my new favorite kind of rustic, is the woolen spun and not the worsted. I love it. I'm gonna go 5. So I think overall we've got a simple 5. Like that's hitting it out of the ballpark on that one. That is the Filled Sweater by Hillesvag. Gorgeous sweater, 5. Right, we are getting into now the Pressed Flowers pullover. This is a color work and texture motif all over, designed by Amy Christoffers, or Savory Knitting. She was also the designer behind the Felix pullover, but this was 100% different. This is a raglan style sweater, knit top down with mosaic knitting. So you were slipping stitches to get a color work motif in of these very boxy square pressed flowers, and interestingly mimics the boxy squariness of the fit. The pattern itself was a dream to knit because it was really interesting. This was my first time doing mosaic. This is also my first time doing an overall colorwork sweater. Yeah, I think the most challenging part was in the beginning. As you're doing the raglan stitches, you're doing short row shaping, you're learning the motif. It was a lot going on. But once you kind of got through that piece, you were just doing the increases, and then obviously you split for body. It was a dream. It did take quite some time. You are knitting almost twice to get one row of stitches, if you will, or one row of completion, because you are slipping those stitches. So it is not a fast knit, and because it's overall colorwork sweater, she takes some time. This yarn, I didn't talk about the yarn. This is a, so the flowers part, the orangey pink part, is a hand dyed merino DK base from Alice Alishka Yarn Cake. It was a super fun yarn to work with, interesting as you go because the colors do change, fade, increase, and get richer as you knit. So that was super fun to watch. And it was almost like plied, like one pink, one orange combo. So if you really get in there, you can see it. And because I'm wearing it, I know these are changing. It's very cool. The main color was Peer Gant in a natural colorway. This is a warmer, almost cream color. I'd originally tried to pair it with a white, wasn't good, it was too stark. So going kind of the creamy with the warmness of the orange hit it out of the park for me. Let's review the Pressed Flowers pullover by Amy Christoffers in the yarn that I chose. So the knitting experience on this for me was amazing. I love knitting it. Side note, and if you haven't been following, I got a heavy set of knitter's elbow during this knit. I was knitting on a lot of other things at the time and have finished a cable shawl. I really think that there was just too much knitting going on. So this sweater actually, I feel, helped me get back into my knitting and ease my pain, kind of like, you know, physio my elbow, because I was able to do so many different things with this sweater as I was knitting, holding it in different ways, even changing hands, I'm normally a continental knitter, I was going English style, and because of the motif and the color work that's happening, it was a really forgiving pattern or fabric. So I feel like, unless you had like a super microscopic eye, it's actually challenging to see where I was changing my knitting technique. So this was a fabulous sweater for me at this time that I needed it to really change up how I was knitting. I will say I'm gonna go 5. I have to go 5 with this experience. I have to. I wanted to say 4 just because you're almost like knitting twice to get one row, but I really enjoyed the experience of knitting on this. And I think for me, so many of those stitches were done in different places as we were on our travels. There's so much memory within this sweater. Maybe that should become part of the criteria for my next review. Project aesthetic, this is a stunner. I mean, this is a simple 5. I wear this sweater, people comment, I feel amazing in it. I am exceptionally proud of this sweater. That's a 5. I could go on, but I mean, you see it, you have eyeballs, you know it, this is popular, it's great. It's a great sweater. Wearability, this actually isn't in the high frequency rotation for me. This is a sweater that I find, because it is 2 different colors, this is going out of my comfort zone of one color wonder. And so I'm not wearing it with everything. I'm not reaching for it 100% of the time. I just blocked it like last week, so it has a longer fit. The sleeves definitely grew on it, so I haven't even worn it properly, you know, to do activities with those longer sleeves on it. it's not super versatile for me. So for that, I'm gonna go a 4. So this is a high 4.5 for me. I think if my wearability was different pieces of sub criteria, it could make the 5 points, but I think for what I have it, and to be fair to the other knits, I'll stay with the main criteria that I have. So we're looking at a high 4.5 for the pressed flowers pullover. This is one of the few gift knits that I'm including in this knitwear review for 2023. This is the sweater that broke the sweater curse. As I was knitting on this sweater, I was calling it the sweater that's breaking the sweater curse. This is a sweater that I knit for the love of my life. I cast it on in August, and I just cast off days before Christmas and gifted it to him. He has worn it around the house. We have not gone out a lot since Christmas, and he runs hot usually anyway. This is a sweater that I freestyled and am quite happy with how it turned out. This yarn is the same yarn that I used for the Felix pullover this year in the Sheep's Natural by Dooryard Yarns in the Sheep's Black. So it's a really rustic, interesting yarn, super itchy scratchy. This is a top-down raglan sweater with 2 stitches for the raglan with lifted increases on either side to give a really cozy, non-holy vibe. And I did 1x1 ribbing on the neck, on the hem, and on the cuffs. Nothing fancy about this. It was a challenge to knit because I was learning the body of the love of my life more and how garments fit him, which is 100% different than garments that fit me and their construction. So there was a lot of ripping out, there was a lot of reknitting, there was a lot of learning in general. In the end, we're going to look at the review to see kind of my satisfaction of how this sweater has gone down, the sweater that broke the sweater curse. Looking at the knitting experience, was it a pleasing experience? Am I highly satisfied with the pattern yarn choice? And did it bring me great joy? Honestly, not so much. I would go... Goodness, I'm gonna go with 3. I'm being very honest. This is a pattern that, or a shirt, I should say a sweater, because there was no pattern, I was freestyling, that I was so excited to wear, and I thought I had it all under control. I knew where I was going on this. I knew I had this vision, this clear vision of what I wanted. I knew the yarn because I had done the Felix pullover in it, and so I thought this was going to be a breeze to get through. It was not, because I did say I was frogging, I was pulling out, I was redoing, I was recalculating. It wasn't very joyous to work on at this point for me. And because I had that Christmas deadline, there was that piece of a timeline, and I'm not super loving the timeline for passion that I have for knitting. Knitting for me is fun and I love it. I feel in regular work life we have enough, deadlines and very strict things that we have to fulfill. Knitting for me is about me and my happiness. So this wasn't bringing me all the happiness in the world knitting on it, other than the fact that I knew that it was going to this loving, caring human in my life, of course. Project aesthetic. I'm also going to go a 3 on this. I feel for the vision I had of the fit that I wanted for this sweater, there's too much ease on it. I think definitely after blocking, the yarn bloomed up beautifully as it did on my Felix, but for this it just made it look more parachutey. I'm not super proud of this finished object, but this is offering me a great jumping off point for the next sweater I knit him. And yes, I've bought the yarn, and yes, I have something picked out. I haven't started, the yarn still has to be picked up, but it's kind of giving me the confidence to knit a second sweater for Christmas 2024. So I have an entire year to knit on this one. So aesthetic, I'm gonna go 3. My favorite piece, or part I should say, of this sweater was the raglan stitches. I find they're just gorgeous, and I would do that idea again. Wearability, he has worn it a couple times. That's it. Again, he's only had it for a few days, so that's fine. But I am fully supporting this sweater to be an at-home sweater. I don't think he could go to meetings in this sweater. It's too casual and fit isn't perfect. It may be like a puppy type sweater. I'm gonna go 3. I don't think he's gonna wear it tons, and that's not him. I think that's just the design. I'm being very honest, and that's all part of it. So I think the sweater that broke the sweater curse is a 3, but if I had to rate it on love alone, that would be like a 10, just saying. Yeah, sweater that broke the sweater curse. The beginning of sweaters for the love of my life. All right, and we have made it to the last sweater of 2023 that I have cast off. Now, mind you, I'm being very careful with my words, and I said cast off. This is a sweater by no specific design, but I did use a bit of the Novice Sweater Junior by Petite Knit to get an idea of the construction of a round yoke with the increases. Again, I went very different on this sweater. I'll get into some of the mods in a moment, and I will create a detailed version of this sweater verbally when I'm into my next episode. I'll try to be as brief as I can with this. This I just cast off this afternoon. This is a ruffly sweater. This is a sweater that was inspired by a mushroom that I saw with my mother while hiking in the ravine near her house. It was a turkey mushroom, I think they call it, a turkey tail mushroom. And this I love so much. In the fall, I knit a girlfriend's baby this exact sweater, but in baby form. I used again the Novice Sweater Junior by Petite Knit to get an idea. So that I actually used the increases a little more by the book of that pattern for my friend's baby. But I wasn't willing to buy another pattern because this was such a simple knit that I thought I'll figure it out for someone of my size. Fast forwarding, so I did the Novice Sweater Junior. I automatically casted on even more stitches than the largest size, but as I went on the different decreases every so often for the bust, I was noticing it was that my increase rate would be very different than, again, the Novice Sweater Junior construction, because again, gauge was different, and apparently my body is different than a junior child. So that's kind of, yeah, the calculations I did quite different. I did a purl row to get a little anchoring stitch or row for the ribbing that I shouldn't say ribbing, ruffling that I did. And because I was very tight with yarn, I was going to have to play a bit of yarn chicken. I knit the ruffle before I even finished the body or any of the sleeves, just to make sure that I liked the look and that I'd have enough yarn for the ruffle, because I know ruffles eat yarn so much. This one ate it. It was like half a ball of a rustic, I didn't even talk about the yarn, of this one rustic yarn that I was using. Ate half the ball in just the ruffle alone. It took me an entire movie. I was watching Top Gun Maverick. It took the entire movie to knit the ruffle. It sounds crazy, completely true. Okay, maybe that's as far as I'll get with the details of the sweater. One by one ribbing for all the pieces of the ribbing of the neck, hem, and cuff. And super fun, super quick knit. This was knit using one strand of soft silk mohair by Knitting for Olive. No, that's not true. The tin, it was the tin silk mohair by Sandnes Garn in, I think, their first colorway, like an Arctic white, if I'm not mistaken. And the gray rusticy worstedy weight, I think, Aran weight, is a yarn that I picked up while away in Mahone Bay. This is by Heidi Woolstrut. This is from Woolworks. Fantastic yarn, loved it. Super soft for rustic. It's worsted spun, so dense. This is a dense fabric. This is a dense and heavy sweater. Okay, let's talk about the review, because I feel like I want to talk about it. I just cast it off, but I'm pausing because we will be talking about it in detail more in the next episode. So we're going to rate this ruffly sweater inspired by a turkey tail mushroom. So knitting experience, it was super fun to knit. The ruffle was a little tedious, but it was a great time. I'm gonna go 5. It was a speedy knit, satisfying. It was a TV knit. It was perfect for the holidays. Awesome. Project aesthetic, I think it's super fab. I feel like for where it hits me and kind of the vision I had of the sweater, with the fit, with the sleeves, with the length, I'm digging it hard. I'm gonna go project pairing on choice, finish up. I'm gonna go heavy 4, low 5 on this. I mean, I'm proud. I'm proud that I figured it out, but it's not a hard sweater to figure out. So I think I'm gonna go 5. It's fresh off the needles. I'm happy. Perhaps I'll reassess it in my next episode, but I'm gonna go 5. Wearability, NA right now. I can't even give it a score because I just cast off. You saw, I haven't woven in my ends. She's not blocked. I don't know. NA for that. So at this point, knitting experience, project aesthetic, I'm going 5. I'm gonna go 5 on this. 5 on the ruffle sweater. All right, that sums up all of the sweaters that I have knit in 2023. I invite you to join me back for the part 2 of this 2023 Everything I Knit series, coming at you very soon. This will be including vests and slipovers as well as accessories. If you enjoyed this podcast, I invite you to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you find yourself willing, I also invite you to click on the link below to the Ko-Fi page, where you may purchase a coffee for the Pairswell Knitting channel. I appreciate those who have already done so. So thank you so much for joining today. I hope you find great joy in your knitting today. Take care, and until next time.